Spoilers. Spoilers. Oh, we have spoilers. What's up, guys? I'm Hunter, and here we want to do a breakdown and discussion of the spoilers for chapter 238 of Jujutsu Kaisen, the battle within the demon-infested Shinjuku, part 15. And, let me just say, I really don't know. I really do not know. Just in case you somehow missed the intro, I'm going to warn you once again that this is a spoiler discussion. So you have 5 seconds to get out of here before you're spoiled. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What's up, guys? I got the pencil here. I tricked in to see you. I didn't say spoiler just yet, just because I got to show you that I have it on me and I keep it on me at all times. And oh, sweet mother of mercy, y'all. Like, I'm not sure if I'm laughing because it's absolutely crazy to me about what happened. One man got 13 chapters. One man got 1.5. In the end, both of them were off screen without showing them up. I don't know. Nothing is going to feel satisfying unless the villains have to win. From the bottom of my heart, the villains have to win or be idiots or something, because there's no way on this good green earth that anything that can be produced here from this point on can be satisfied. Oh, sweet mother of mercy, dog. I don't get. I mean, I get it. It makes sense legally. It does. But on every other level, dog, why? Why would you do it? Why would you do it? Like, okay. I'm gonna stop speaking in vagueness. Let's hop into it. So we open up and we hop right into where we left off, except Kashimo's evolution into the mythic beast Amber has continued, and he now actually has 3 eyes on his head. He has not achieved the true transcendent state like Tengen and Sukuna have with 4 whole eyes, but he does develop a 3rd eye, which is commonly a symbol of some variation of enlightenment, depending on your inspiration, the 3rd eye opening. And we see that, at least according to the rough translations that I have, that this 3rd eye actually allows some sort of X-ray vision for Kashimo, and he's simply gazing upon the form that is true form Sukuna. And I will admit, the art in this chapter, let me just take a quick glance through it all over again. The art in this chapter is continuing on his streak. Gege, it feels like he's finally. Yeah, I'd say I was about to critique, but no, I'm looking at the whole art, and this is just in the raw. See, this is nowhere near cleaned up or anything like that. The art in this chapter looks immaculate on every single level. There is a little bit of dead panel space, but even still, I'd say the use of dead panel space works well for what Gege is going for. So it feels like Gege, I'm not saying it's waking back up, but there were some very rough looking parts in Gojo versus Sukuna. But it seems like did he lie again? Are we ending Jujutsu Kaisen this year? Are we ending this year? I'm sorry. I'm literally just blown away. I will, a part of me had thought I prepared myself mentally for this. Clearly I did not, because dog, I'm now lost in the night. It's the first week of October. It is the first week, and we're already doing this. I think, now don't feel free to prove me wrong again. I believe we're on break next week, which is fantastic for me. I now can add Kashimo to the list of videos of characters I need to complete. Why? Why? Dog. We're on break though. Beautiful. I can do my good writing stuff. Sweet mother of mercy, though. Oh, sweet mother of mercy, sweet mother. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I keep tapping in and out, but I do love the way Sukuna is portrayed here, right? Like, one of the biggest things that Gege is very good at is utilization of darkness and shadows for the portrayal of characters. And you see Kashimo, essentially this beacon of light. Notably, the character is entirely coated in what we know is blue hair and likely blue to yellow sparkly electricity, but using the medium of manga, the black and white really sells it here to where Sukuna is this absolute visage of straight darkness, wielding Kamutoke in the upper right hand. And you see Kashimo, this defiant light, already starting to get consumed by shadow as the darkness that emanates from Sukuna soaks the entire area, Kashimo being the only beacon of light. I like it. It's true. It really is the state of being right now. Sukuna is this incarnation of pure, straight, undeniable evil, and Kashimo is the light of a bygone era, realistically. And Sukuna is the darkness of a bygone era, but as we see, one of these bygone eras is much more let's say it's much more valid than the other. And the interesting thing is, considering Kashimo is developing a mutation, or at least, is it a mutation? I suppose a third eye is a mutation. He's developing a third eye. So he looks upon Sukuna's mutation, Sukuna's mutation, Sukuna, in his mutation. And instead of being disgusted, instead of being put off, he simply views it as perfection, the apex of a sorcerer's form, which is interesting. Honestly, I mean, I see why, and to be fair, I suppose it strictly is when you're talking about sheer sorcerer optimization, which does make sense. And if there's anything that Kashimo is going to respect as someone who can mutate himself with his own curse technique, he likely understands the value deeper than anybody else could. And we start to get a confirmation of why this form is viewed as straight liquid perfection on a perfect cell type beat. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm still like in denial. I'm still in denial, but we do get to see that 4 arms is not simply an aesthetic purpose. It's not even a simple combat purpose. Like, oh, I have 4 arms. You have 2 arms. We can not fight evenly because I have 2 extra appendages. No, it goes deep down to the logic of Jujutsu, where hand signs are so prevalent in battle, especially if you want to use the apex of your abilities, that simply having an extra pair of arms. Imagine in the midst of fighting an opponent with your upper set, you can cast techniques with your lower set, fire off different techniques with your lower set. Imagine as Sukuna's punching you in the face with his upper arm, he's reeling back a fire arrow with his lower set of arms. Or hypothetically, as Sukuna's having a whole conversation with you, as he's boxing you with his upper arms and his lower arms are weaving a technique, he can actually speak out the incantations to go with his lower arms weaving a technique because he has a second mouth. And notably, mystically and magically, due to the nature of this perfective evolution, Sukuna doesn't even need to worry about like running out of breath. It seems like his second mouth, the one in his stomach, is disconnected from his respiratory system, which is unique. I wonder how that fully works. Like, we have like a lot down there, if you didn't know. Like, in our stomach area, there's a lot there. Like your large intestine, small intestine, your actual stomach, your liver, gallbladder. Like, you have a bunch of stuff down there. So I wonder if Sukuna's like extra beef comes from, like, does he have a second esophagus? Because I think we know that mouth is fully functional. Apparently, he can speak. So I have no idea. Like, I remember there was some There was, I think it was like an Instagram art account that would do like breakdowns of the inside of Pokemon. Like, I kind of want that for Sukuna. I want to know the logistics of how it works. Like, for, I think you even see it somewhat. I remember when I was super duper into Ben 10, and to be fair, I still am. That's why your boy sub to the in tank itching every other weekend. But with that being the case, I remember there were like descriptions of how something like forearms would work. The Tetraman, Ben 10's, honestly, I wouldn't say most iconic form, but one of his most iconic forms. And it was sort of established that he technically couldn't function because, like, in order for a second pair of arms to work, you would need like a second lower layer of pectorals. And you can kind of see that with Sukuna. He does seem to have his main chest, which goes with the main upper arms, and then he has the second pectorals that go with it. So it looks like Gege is somewhat logistically well, following anatomy is a stretch when you come to a four-arm, two-mouth, four-eyed monster, but it is close enough. Which I do think is neat, though I do really want to know how that second mouth works. And why is it so much bigger than the first? Like, it is like, this mouth reaches all the way across his torso. I don't know about you, but my mouth doesn't do that, and I highly doubt yours does either. Is bro a little Toto or something? Like, why is his mouth so big? But with that being the case, we see that Sukuna, back in his heyday, back in his prime, had slaughtered the 5 Void Generals and the Sun, Moon, and Star Squad, and also made the Sichin Squad of the Sugawara clan and angels from the Abe clan retreat. So that's the mention of Angel. So we got mentions of the 2 most notable characters from that period. We got mention of the Sun, Moon, and Star Squad is the squad that Uraume led. She was the general of that squad. And this reveals that Sukuna himself did have direct interactions with her, which does fully explain the, for lack of a better term, mental breakdown she was having when she sent Sukuna into the colony, because she was likely legitimately traumatized by him then. Which goes to show that space manipulation, even before Sukuna learned it himself, was not effective. Not effective. Because, I don't know, this is once again loose translations. Once again, maybe once the full translations come out, it'll be something different. But it says finished off. Not defeated. Not squad wiped. No, finished off the 5 Void Generals, the Sun, Moon, and Star Squad, and the Decision Squad, and Angels. He slaughtered them all. Without any sort of spatial cleave or dismantle. Uro is space manipulation. Even back then, if the angels from the Abe clan is to be a thing, he beat, at least seemingly, he beat Jacob's Ladder. Or at least he blitzed the original incarnation of Angel so badly that they couldn't activate the technique. Man. Whew. And you even see, once again, this flashback is very, very blurry. I need to stop saying once again. Therefore, you can witness the fact that Sukuna in this flashback is wielding both of his weapons. Interesting how he wields it. He wields Kamutoke in the upper right, but then he wields his staff in the lower left. I suppose, like, Kamutoke can be wielded in whatever hand, because it's only a one-handed weapon, but I suppose he wields the spear, we don't know the name of it, in the lower pair of arms. Notably, he does look beefier back then. I don't know. He looks a little bit skinny nowadays. But in that flashback, he does look a bit beefier. I assume he uses 2 hands for the spear to jab. Or he just uses 1 hand. He probably doesn't need to use 2. And just pokes with that. And just has them on opposite hands so they don't get in the way of each other. Which is interesting. And notably, we don't get an actual reveal of what the spear does here, despite seeing it. Because it looks like Kamutoke's lightning is what was primarily used to strike down that clan. So Sukuna likely didn't even fight them with his abilities. Or like his own innate abilities. He simply defeated them with nothing but a toy. Yeah, we're genuinely building to Sukuna just being truly unstoppable, truly and genuinely unstoppable, which makes sense. Now that we know he was the strongest the entire time, there was never really any doubt or competition. It makes sense. Makes absolute sense. And we see Kashimo looking on in awe as he sees this form that he's likely heard about in legends, right? Like, I can't imagine the mythos of Sukuna was ever lost to time. Like, sorcerers literally 1,000 years later know of Sukuna and his general achievements, an imaginary war deity. Like, Sukuna really was something to behold. And Kashimo, someone who was born 600 years afterwards, is finally witnessing the power that made the heavens shake, the power that decides the heaven and earth, the power of he who truly, I suppose, earned the title of the Honored One. It was never something he actively sought out. It was never something that he likely even actively desired. He simply obtained it naturally, walking down his old, I was about to say his own eightfold path. I'm not sure how many steps Sukuna had to take to reach this point. But Kashimo looks on. And unfortunately, I do kind of wish we got to see more of Kashimo's face. Don't get me wrong, I do like the mask aesthetic that he has going on with the cursed energy. I think it's neat. I still like that the three eyes are a permanent thing on him. But considering we do see aspects of his ears and stuff like that, and even his hair stays mostly the same, I do kind of wish we got to see some of his face, because presumably he is smiling, right? Like, he is excited for this battle. But it would have been nice to see, especially considering we don't get much more Kashimo in this chapter. And we see that while Kashimo is honestly mesmerized by the perfect form for Jujutsu, which is it's so interesting to me that this is perfection within Jujutsu. And I suppose, you know what, it genuinely makes sense. I was about to be like, it's still ugly, but it genuinely makes sense. Jujutsu and sorcery in of itself is an ugly thing. It has amazing abilities. I know if I were to give any one of you, anybody, curse speech, y'all will go crazy. Heavens forbid someone had the limitless and the six eyes in our world. They would wreak havoc. Heck, even simple techniques like helicopter mans or Hakari still made. Well, admittedly, Hakari, I can't say Hakari's technique is simple, but like, even techniques like that, I know would go absolutely bonkers in our world. But ultimately, we would never be able to use it to the same level that Sukuna does, because he's simply built better for it. He is built perfectly for combat, 4 eyes for extra perception, 4 hands for the ability to fight, wield weapons, and weave signs at the same time, 2 mouths to be able to speak likely different incantations at the same time, if he can do something like that. I'm not sure. Notably, I only have 1 mouth, and like, what's that thing? I think it's like, rub your stomach and pat your head, like you can't. Oh, I'm doing it. I forget, it's something else. There's something that you're like not supposed to be able to do because it like overloads your brain's not nervous system, like your sensory systems, or not your sensory systems. Like, your brain can only process so much at once, so you can't like do insanely opposing options with 2 hands. But it seems like Sukuna has bypassed that limitation. He's evolved so far as a sorcerer that any hypothetical limitations that deal in regards to brain power don't even matter to him. And we see he simply slides Kamutoke into his mouth, and Kashimo lunges towards Sukuna. And unfortunately, Sukuna, he just has no issue dealing with Kashimo now. None at all. So, a big thing that... Sorry, y'all, it's early in the morning. Stay hydrated. But a big thing that I was mentioning, and I was worried about, with Sukuna returning to his true form, was the idea that his stats would get massively buffed even if he got much beefier, because simply we know the way cursed energy reinforcement works. If you have a stronger base in the same, you give, let me just break it down simply. You have person A, who is frail. You have person B, who is in the physical prime of their life, and not frail, beefy even. You give them the same amount of cursed energy. Despite them having the same amount of cursed energy, person B will always be stronger than person A because of their body, their base body. We see this very specifically with Yuji and Yuta. Yuta is a relatively frail young man. He bolsters that with his insane amount of cursed energy to bypass his weaker physical state. Meanwhile, Yuji, who doesn't have nearly as much cursed energy, is still nearly as physically strong as Yuta, maybe even stronger now that he's liberated, because of his extremely powerful physical base. And you can see Kashimo, who went from being able to relatively easily tag 20-finger Maguna, now when faced with true form Sukuna, can do absolutely nothing. He gets absolutely disregarded. And sure, you can definitely chalk this up to Sukuna having an excess of limbs, but notably, Kashimo's hitting with the palms, these things that can supposedly vaporize everything, and Sukuna's just knocking them away. A knee blocked casually with a lower limb, another hand caught. Like, the fluidity of Kashimo is entirely overridden by the sheer speed, dexterity, and comprehension of Sukuna. Like, dog. What are... and I mean, I like how Kashimo's hair thingies have turned into more horns. That's nice. It's a cool aesthetic change. And we see that, unfortunately for Kashimo, Sukuna is just toying with him. Doesn't even really bother to hit him with anything at first other than two basic punches, and they send Kashimo flying. However, Kashimo, not one to be discouraged by a little bit of physical pain, launches in. You see his hands begin to spark with an extreme amount of electricity, and Sukuna prepares something with his lower arms. You can see the upper arm spread out. He still has Kamutoke in his mouth, I think. Oh wait, no. He took Kamutoke back out his mouth, from what it looks like. It's hard to tell by the rougher sketch, but I think he took Kamutoke back out his mouth and put it right back in his right hand. But then his lower arms wield a sign. And we see that Kashimo fires what is most likely an electromagnetic wave. So I believe this is the thing that everyone was gassing up to be light speed in the previous chapter. Like, the translations mentioned something about electromagnetic waves which move at light speed, and we see Sukuna be about to be hit by it, but he manages to speak, do a whole incantation and all that before this beam reaches him. So I'm gonna make a humble request to all my devastating calc beasts out there. Please count this. If this does end up being one of the electromagnetic waves, one of the light beams, then FTL. I can only say FTL Sukuna, though. No one else should scale to this. No one. It's highly likely that Gojo doesn't even scale to this. Just based on the fact that we clearly see the difference between Maguna and Forearm Sukuna. No one in the entire series should scale to this, except for Sukuna. Which is crazy. Very crazy, but it seems very, very evident. And we see that Sukuna is in such a good mood that he actually genuinely warns Kashimo to dodge the next attack he's about to throw out. This is the strongest fighter from 400 years ago, using his once-in-a-lifetime curse technique that he's specifically been saving for this man that he heard about 400 years ago. This is... I mean, it's hard. It's going to be super hard to correlate. Presumably, this Kashimo would still stand no chance against Gojo, because he's shown... He knows of domain implication, but that doesn't mean he can use it. So, obviously, even this Kashimo would not be able to pierce through the neutral limitless. It would not work. But, I don't know, man. Scaling him is going to be a nightmare. Because we just don't get it. He's tagging 20-finger Giga Fatigue Naguna, which is still good. Like, it's more than most characters could do. You could arguably say that's top 3 in the verse, but it's like, dog. He's... I hate to compare Kashimo to this. I hate to. But I still remember when your boy was not that guy with a pencil, but that kid with a pencil. And I come from a big family. Shock horror. And I remember me and all my fellow cousins and pretty much anyone who was like, I'd say 10 years or more younger than this one older cousin. We would all try to gank him. Like, we would all be like, oh, it's the cookout. It's time for our next opportunity to try and fight this man. So we attempted our best to try and gank this man. And he would just mollywop all of us. All of us at the same time. He didn't have 4 arms and 2 mouths. He would grab us by the wrist, throw us about. Like, we loved it. Because obviously, you know, he was so much stronger than us. It didn't really matter to us. We were doing our best, but we knew we would lose. It feels like that. It feels like Kashimo's throwing himself up against the bigger cousin with no avail. I don't think my cousin was ever so dominant that he was calling out like punches and kicks or anything like that. But I can imagine this is what would be if he was in that kind of mood. He would have just said, oh, by the way, watch out, pencil. I'm about to grab your wrist and throw you halfway across the... Because we see that Sukuna from the bottom mouth warns to dodge. And impressively enough, Kashimo does seemingly manage... I honestly can't tell, though. Because I'm not sure what this bottom panel is portraying. Is it portraying Kashimo getting hit? I don't know. But the electric blast, or the electromagnetic blast, never reaches Sukuna. Never does. Because he launches a massive, seemingly enough, dismantle slash. And Kashimo recognizes it as the attack that took Satoru Gojo's life. The attack that cut space. So for everyone saying that he can't use it, or that it's difficult for him to use, I need you to do me a favor. Hold that one for me. Hold that one for me. Hold it. Hold it. Don't get me wrong. I've taken numerous L's. So, like, I'm probably, like, 1 for your, like, 57. But still, come on now, y'all. It was hard to obtain, not hard to use. You can literally see, he just throws it out, dog. How? We can't win. We can't win without me calling absolute malarkey, dog. How do we win, bro? How do we win? There's no way on this good green. I know what happens at the end of the chapter, y'all. But how do we win? How? I genuinely have absolutely no clue. I have no... It's so big. Like, pause all over. You know, unpause it. I'm sounding just like Kenjaku when he was dealing with Jinny Todori. But it literally is so massive. This one... And notably, it doesn't even seem to travel. It just appears. It appears, and the reason I say that is because the cleave despite being a massive thing that digs into the ground where Sukuna launches it from, the ground between him and that spot is undamaged. It specifically is attacking the space where before his flying slashes would fly. Like Mahoraga could react once he adapted to dismantle, to cleave, because they used to fly. The reason Gojo couldn't dodge it, the reason this final perception blossom appears, because it doesn't travel. It just appears. It's like Kamui. One of the biggest reasons that before the massive nerf to the neutral limitless that I still need to make a video talking about. There's so many things I need to talk about. I need to rank the Gojo versus Sukuna chapters. I need to rank the Kashimo versus Sukuna chapter. I'm not ranking that. Unless you guys really want me to rank that. I'm not ranking that. But so much about that fight I need to talk about. But even before the massive confirmation of the Giga nerf that the neutral limitless got, one of the biggest things in the Kakashi versus Gojo matchup was Kamui. Kamui doesn't travel. The big thing that the neutral limitless did was that any attack that traveled was like, oh, okay, you can't reach through it. But Kamui never traveled. So it was heavily theorized that, well, Kamui would just break through the neutral limitless because it doesn't need to break through anything. If Gojo can be perceived, which we know he can get Kamui'd. And it appears the same kind of effect is in effect with Sukuna's Space Slash. This dismantle slash just appears, spawns in space. So Maguna just... So Gojo really never stood a chance. Never did. At least if my interpretation... Once again, I am only looking at the chapter in its rawest form with no real translations or anything like that. And it appears just based on how the ground is undamaged from where Sukuna is. I'm sorry, I keep switching on his name. But Sukuna, the ground from where he's standing to where the ground is that the slash appears, there's no damage in between. This does seem like an instant spawning attack that slashes space. No, this is literally impossible. But then again, the weird thing is we see more of these slashes travel later in the chapter. So, I don't really know. Maybe this isn't an instantaneous appearance, but it feels like an instantaneous appearance. And I can't tell. It seems like on the bottom right of that page, Kashimo got hit, but once again, I cannot tell. And we see, as Kashimo recognizes the slash that cuts the world, Sukuna says that apparently... I'm assuming he's referring to Yorozu when he says this, because he claims to Kashimo that a stupid person once tried to teach him love. And he said that he's straight up alone because there's no person on his level. There is no one who could teach him love. Not even Gojo Satoru could properly teach Sukuna, the king of curses, love. Because he simply was never on that level. Never even close to it. And thusly, he stands alone, unparalleled. And that's rough, buddy. It really is. I mean, well, wait till I put you in some... Well, I already did. And honestly, I know some people are going to be like, well, it's time to remake that Kurama versus Sukuna video. Maybe. Depends on how much of the light stuff matters. And, like, how high we can push the space stuff. Because I don't know. Then again, unironically, if you think that Sukuna is planetary via drastically scaling above Yuki's output, which will be the black hole, which could have destroyed the world, and you take the statement from the volume cover of the first volume, and you give some light speed stuff, you could make a pretty solid argument. Sukuna can travel and cause some havoc in other verses. Do I think he dominates other verses, even with the spatial slash? The main one that's coming to mind, and the main one that I made a whole thing for already, which I'm probably going to release soon enough, is Seven Deadly Sins. I still don't think he clears that. I don't think he clears Naruto as a whole. I don't think... Definitely not. Nowhere near Dragon Ball. He may not even get past... No, he may get past... Maybe no. He may not even get past Saiyan Saga. So, there are a bunch of characters in other worlds that could make Sukuna feel less lonely. But in this world, he stands unparalleled. And interestingly enough, he says this with a smile on his face as he cracks his neck, being back in his original flesh for the first time in 1,000 years. And we see, unlike others, he took pleasure in that loneliness and finding a new answer to it. And we see that Sukuna ultimately reveals that he says, "Oop, she chose the wrong person to teach love. And she should have told it to Gojo or Kashimo." I'm not sure if that's a Yorozu upscale or Sukuna just mocking them. I'm pretty sure it's Sukuna mocking them, which is unfortunate. Like, and of course, like I mentioned before, or just in last chapter, just because Kashimo has a lightning resistance does not mean he has a lightning immunity. And we see Sukuna strike Kashimo again. Once again, I do like the anatomical structure of this four-armed Sukuna. You see like the almost double back he developed. Like you see the lower back and then a second back sprouts out of it with the markings on it to support the upper arms. Sukuna's extremely ripped. But he my stomach is going crazy right now. But we see he strikes Kashimo again with Kamutoke. And Kashimo, once again, due to being in his mythical beast amber state, is relatively unharmed, but Sukuna straight up appears behind him on some instant transmission type beat. You literally don't even see him move. And he was a decent distance away from Kashimo. Remember, Kashimo is super duper amped in terms of speed right now. This is the fastest Kashimo's ever been. And he turns and meets Sukuna with a blast from his palm. But unfortunately, before he's even able to get it off, Sukuna seems to grab the wrist that the blast is contained in, simply cup Kashimo's other hands, and take the lower two arms and dig them into Kashimo's stomach. Kashimo stands absolutely no chance against a Sukuna who's simply smiling in his face. Once again, I do wish we could get to see a little bit more of Kashimo's actual face, his real reactions to this, because obviously I'm assuming he likes it, right? He's probably into it, but at the same time, it would have been nice to see it on his face. But you just see the absolute beating he's taking, and you see that this hit, despite him being closer to cursed energy, he still is human, and he coughs up life juice from the interaction, and Sukuna just body slams him into the ground, taking him by his wrist, and boom. And you see he gets slammed into the ground so hard that it seems like Sukuna slams him and then smacks him away, almost on some Rhino from Miles Morales PS4 Spider-Man type beat, where it's literally like boom, bounces Miles off the pavement and then knocks him away. The same thing happens to Sukuna. Or no, the same thing happens to Kashimo by Sukuna. And we see Kashimo, he struggles. He really tries to maintain himself. He opens a palm to launch another strike, but it's nowhere near enough. And before he can even do anything, we see a net, just a straight wall of slashes, tear their way through creation towards Kashimo. And I assume these are the regular ones too, because of the, I'm going to chalk it up to Sukuna being able to vary the type of slash. We have the generally appearing slash, the one that just spawns. There's no real travel to it. The one that instantly tore open the space in the world itself. And then we have these ones that travel towards Kashimo, because Sukuna doesn't even consider him worthy of the real slash, the apex of his jujutsu now. He just sends the originals at him, because Kashimo wasn't even worthy of being taught love by Sukuna, or Sukuna was not worthy of anything that Sukuna truly had to offer. And he simply fought her. And we see, in a similar vein to the last person who had dismantle used on them, Kashimo is taken back to a previous life. Admittedly not in an airport. He's in a field, and we see he's old once again. And we see that Sukuna does have an answer for Kashimo's question. As Kashimo looks up at the heavens in this mystic plane, dressed in a black robe, and you know what black typically symbolizes, especially for a character like Kashimo, who's consistently soaked in white, soaked in that purity, that I called him in the beginning of this discussion the one light within the darkness. Even that light has been consumed by the ever-ending, never-ending shadow of Sukuna. And we see that Sukuna basically tells Kashimo, hey, dude, in order for you to be acknowledged as the strongest and have so many people challenge you, you had to slay them yourself for them to keep coming after you. And you did. You kept slaying them one after another, after another, after another, after another. So tell me, for warriors like us, if that's not showing mercy, what is? And that's an interesting perspective to put on it, because Kashimo very specifically asked, how do you show mercy? How do you feel? Everything's just dirt to me. But in a way, giving them that warrior's end, giving them that, I suppose, like the taste of defeat, the victory of, I suppose, ironically enough, it's an oxymoron, the victory of defeat, if you know what I'm saying, where they didn't have to go out like Kashimo did, old and alone and feeling like he wasted his first life or really, as far as he knew at the time, maybe his only life, he gave them all mercy. He gave them all warrior's ends. And in a world as twisted and as evil and as forced and focused on combat, like the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, there is no greater mercy than that. So Kashimo, who could never understand mercy, was actually one of the most merciful people out there by consistently slaughtering the opposition. Which is, once again, it goes to show the fundamental difference within our world and the Jujutsu world. If you were to ask me what mercy would be, it would be the opposite. It would be maybe defeating them, but not slaying them on some Batman type beat. Like, I'll never take your life, but I will break every single bone in your body. Like on something like that. But no, in a world that's so slay or be slain like Jujutsu, being slain in and of itself is an act of mercy. Not, because technically you could say an act of cruelty, an act of disgust, an act of disrespect, and not mercy within Jujutsu is leaving your opponent alive after defeating them. Breaking their spirit, breaking their body, but leaving them very much alive so they can revel in the fact that they were inferior. That would be merciless, because they would live the rest of their days worthless in their own eyes. But Kashimo was kind enough to give them an end that they could be proud of, even if it was simply throwing themselves up against the wall. And we see that Kashimo only spends 2 panels in his old state as he flashes back to his current one. And we see that ultimately Sukuna believes that since they are the strongest, they are inherently loved. They don't need to experience love, but they receive it. This is something that Gojo mentioned of himself, in sort of being that lotus flower that is looked upon and appreciated, but not really loved in of itself, where the lotus flower is not able to love you back. A blooming flower will never be able to love you back. And a similar vein to how Sukuna, Kashimo, Gojo, the strongest of their respective eras, ultimately, they are those flowers, admired, revered, loved, because the fact that they were the strongest of their respective eras. But that doesn't mean that they should wallow in the fact that they can never love back, that this gap in their basic strength is what allows them to stand alone and separate from everyone else. They should, in fact, revel in that loneliness, revel in that power, and focus on walking down a path that is not concerned with love. And of course, we see that if that were the case, right, if being loved and feared temporarily was truly okay for Sukuna, then why? Why bother incarnating? Why bother looking to the future or anything like that? Why split his soul and travel to the current time? And we see Sukuna reveals that ultimately it's because he can. Love is worthless. Love is trash. Love is garbage. And ultimately, since he knows he will never be satisfied by another human being in combat, in life, in anything, never ever, he admits that he just wants to do it. Why incarnate 1,000 years later? Because why not? If he's bored, he'll do something to make himself not bored. If he's hungry, he will eat. If he's annoyed by something, they will fall to him. And honestly, he'll even play if he feels like it. That's what he was just doing. Ultimately, Sukuna Ryomen is... I wouldn't even... Here's the thing, right? I would call him a calamity. I would literally call him a calamity in a similar vein to a tornado or a hurricane or an earthquake. But I feel like that's incorrect. I say he's much more calamity, as in like Calamity Ganon. Just this manifestation of pure hedonistic desire and evil, given fleshly form. That's what I'd say he is. A sick, twisted creature with not more than his own desires filling his head and nothing in the world being able to stop him from succeeding in those desires. And we see that Kashimo ultimately asks, well, fine, you say all that. You live that life. You do what you want, when you want. But it's got to get boring. And we see that the one thing that keeps Sukuna from being bored is that it's the flavor of the people he defeats. It's diverse and ephemeral. And ultimately, it's the perfect thing to kill some time until he himself falls to time itself. But it's interesting. Sukuna doesn't ever view himself as properly immortal, which is intriguing. I wonder if this true perfect body does have a genuine limited lifespan. Because he does, at least I don't know, once again by this rough translation, it does seem like he believes he will perish one day or another. Which is very, very interesting. But of course, Kashimo got off screen. We don't even get to see his body. Done. And we see the domain that was holding Uraume and Hikari breaks. Notably, Uraume does look a bit nettled, and Hikari does have a big old grin on his face, so I'm assuming he did get the jackpot. Which does work out, that's good. He's definitely going to need it. And we see that Sukuna actually notices the arrival of more people, not just Uraume and Hikari from Hikari's domain. He notices that none other than the brat Yuji Itadori and Higuruma Hiromi arrive at the battlefield. And Sukuna questions, what can you even do? And it's true. I don't have any idea of what Yuji can do. Though admittedly, this is a hard final panel. And Yuji is looking a bit different. Very different, in fact. His hands are now clawed, which is interesting. His arms, seemingly enough, are bearing the flesh beneath them. He's looking very similar to the Armor Titan from Attack on Titan. Ironically enough, even the motion he's making where his mouth is covered, it looks like he is about to like bite down in order to shift into a Titan or anything like that. Though admittedly, we see his arms go out in the larger area. And Higuruma comes down with his gavel of judgment, which is very, very interesting. If Sukuna has the domain back, Higuruma's worthless. Unless the domain counts as an act of violence, and then thusly Sukuna's subject to his crimes and confiscation. So maybe there is hope. Maybe. If Sukuna feels like playing. But that's the end of chapter 238. You can tell I had a lot of thoughts on it. In the end, I'll still say the chapter is worthy. Obviously, you're gonna, no matter how much it makes sense, right? Like, no matter how much it makes sense, that Kashimo gets off screen. That Kashimo was fought. That Kashimo gets one shot, all that. I'm still going to be annoyed we did not get more out of him. No, I mean, I think, did we even get a name technique out of him? Hold on, let me glaze through the entire chapter real quick. I don't even think we got one name technique out of him. I think we got one. I think the light beam was a name technique. Oh, wait, no. It looks like there's one with the lightning hands. Once again, no, it's the same blast thing. One name technique? I think? No maximum. No domain. Nothing. This character that we built up for fighting Sukuna for since chapter 158, literally over 3 years ago at this point. This character that we built so much time on gets one chapter of doing nothing into another chapter of admittedly forcing. Once again, especially based off this chapter and how Kashimo is forced to be dealt with. I'm not even sure. I'm really not sure. A lot of Kashimo fans were saying that Kashimo forced Sukuna to go back to his original form. Maybe he did. I'll give that. I'll be the most generous to Kashimo. Forcing Sukuna to go back to his original form, but doing nothing but being toyed with like a child. It makes sense. Sukuna really is that powerful. Kashimo comes from a nobody era with no one. Like what? Ryu was the only guy from his era, and we saw Ryu get pieced up by 15-finger Maguna. Obviously, Kashimo wasn't going to do anything, but just the 2 whole chapters? I don't know, something, man. But even still, I get why. I'm happy Kashimo got the battle of a lifetime that he wanted. I'm happy he got a warrior's end that he gave so many people. I'm happy Sukuna showed him mercy, ultimately, in defeating him using a technique and not simply lightning battling him. Is it unfortunate that he got off-screened? Yeah. Am I surprised at this point? No. Do I think anyone can beat this Sukuna? No, not at all. Kashimo didn't even weaken him. So unless it's somehow magically revealed that Sukuna is still at low curse energy reserves, there's no reason this man should lose. Even against Higuruma. Though maybe Higuruma can come in and save the day with his domain. It really depends. If a domain expansion counts as violence, then Higuruma's worthless. But if it doesn't, and whatever mystical new powers that Yuji has, maybe they can save Jujutsu. But right now, it is not looking all too hot. But still, this is an undeniably W chapter. I'm happy we got the full revelation of Sukuna. I'm happy we got more of his backstory. I'm happy we got full, proper confirmation of his motivations and his life and his ideas. And I'm happy we got to see him play with Kashimo and give Kashimo the battle of 2 lifetimes. However, that's what I think. Please, what you guys think in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this beefy old video, please leave the last bolt in the comment section down below. It can be 1 word, it can be 3 words, the last bolt, for respect of Kashimo Hajime, the character who grievously overestimated his own abilities. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below where you can support for as low as $1 get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You can also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Recliner Plays, Red Wolf 4765, and Perp Skills. I'd like to give another thank you to our $5 patrons, Sean, Red Wolf 4765, Midnight Gem Lord, Kevin, and Demix LND. I'd like to give another very big thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Ochia and iDemo Comic. I'd like to give a hefty thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. I'd like to give another gargantuan thank you to our $25 patrons, Igneel and Calvin Elder.